Death and taxes are the only two certainties in life. Ironically, it was a spreadsheet error regarding the latter that led to the former in my past life. One minute I was a corporate auditor staring at a glowing monitor, and the next, I woke up in the body of Lord Malachi's chief accountant. Malachi was the primary antagonist of the notoriously tragic fantasy novel, The Throne of Blood and Gold. My character's original fate? I was supposed to quietly embezzle the kingdom's wealth, get caught by Malachi, and be fed to his pet wyvern in Chapter 4. But I am an auditor, and I don't do sloppy math. If I am going to die for embezzlement, I might as well commit the crime properly. My new plan was simple: manipulate the kingdom's tax codes, falsify expense reports, and siphon the royal treasury completely dry. I would bankrupt the throne before the so-called hero even arrived to reclaim it, thereby saving my own neck and retiring on a private island. There was just one tiny, logistical nightmare. The villain's ledgers were kept in his fortress, but the actual physical gold was stored beneath the royal palace. To facilitate my grand heist, I needed access. So I took on a second job. By day, I was the terrifying, number-crunching mastermind for the villain. By night, I scrubbed floors as a lowly, unassuming maid in the royal palace, smuggling out gold bars in my laundry basket. It was the perfect, foolproof plan. At least it was until I ran into him. Prince Julian, the crown prince, the supposed hero of the story, and the man destined to inherit the very treasury I was actively looting. In the original novel, Julian reclaims his throne only to die a tragic, penniless death after realizing the kingdom is ruined. I had fully intended to be the one who ruined it. What I didn't intend was for the brooding, ridiculously handsome prince to catch me in the middle of the night, half covered in soot, trying to stuff a jeweled chalice down my apron. Instead of arresting me, he thought I was a fiercely dedicated maid trying to polish the royal heirlooms. And somehow, in a bizarre twist of fate, the crown prince fell head over heels for the clumsy but hard-working maid. Now, I am juggling double-entry bookkeeping for a tyrant, laundering stolen funds through dummy corporations, and desperately trying to avoid the romantic advances of the very prince whose inheritance I am stealing. If Malachi finds out I'm skimming from him, I'm dead. If Julian finds out his sweet little maid is the architect of his kingdom's financial ruin, I'm dead. I just wanted to live well, but avoiding death is proving to be quite a difficult full-time job. Help! Chapter 1. They don't teach you the physical logistics of embezzlement in accounting school. In my past life, transferring 10,000 gold pieces would have taken 2 clicks of a mouse and a verified security token. In this cursed fantasy novel, it required a mop bucket, an industrial amount of elbow grease, and the lower back strength of a seasoned pack mule. Gold is heavy, shockingly heavy. At 2 a.m., the subterranean halls of the royal palace were damp, echoing, and supposedly guarded. Fortunately, as Lord Malachi's chief accountant, I had already defunded the night watch's lantern oil budget, plunging this specific corridor into a very convenient, cost-effective darkness. I grunted, shoving another handful of stamped royal ingots beneath the soapy, false bottom of my wooden bucket. My maid's uniform, a scratchy, terribly fitted gray monstrosity, was already soaked with sweat and actual floor wax. I wiped a streak of soot from my forehead, lifted the impossibly heavy bucket by its groaning iron handle, and began my waddling escape toward the servants' stairwell. Step clunk, step clunk, step clunk. I was making excellent time until a shadow detached itself from the nearest tapestry. Halt! The voice was low, commanding, and resonated with the kind of innate authority that usually came with a trust fund and a bloodline. I froze, my arms screaming as the bucket of stolen GDP threatened to snap my wrists. A tall figure stepped into the sliver of moonlight filtering through a high grate. He was dressed in dark leather armor, a polished sword resting casually at his hip. Even in the gloom, his features were unfairly striking, sharp jawline, messy dark hair, and piercing, storm gray eyes that were currently scanning me with intense suspicion. It was Prince Julian, the legitimate heir, the designated hero of the Throne of Blood and Gold, and the man whose inheritance I was currently holding in dirty bathwater. Panic. Panic now, my brain supplied. Instead, I dropped to my knees, taking the bucket down with me so it hit the stone floor with a muffled, extremely heavy thud. I grabbed a rag and started frantically scrubbing the dry, spotless cobblestone in front of me. "Forgive me, Your Highness," I squeaked, pitching my voice an octave higher. "I didn't see you there. Just doing my rounds." Julian blinked, his hand slowly falling away from his sword hilt. He stepped closer, his boots making no sound. He crouched down, towering over my huddled form. I kept scrubbing the dry stone like it owed me money. "Your rounds?" he repeated, his voice losing its harsh edge, replaced by a deep, bewildered softness. "It is the dead of night. The castle is asleep. Why are you washing the floors in the treasury corridor?" "Dirt never sleeps, sire," I panted, throwing some genuine desperation into my performance. "Lord Malachi demands perfection. If there is a speck of dust, it comes out of my wages." Julian's eyes darkened, but not at me. The hatred he harbored for the tyrant who had usurped his kingdom flared in his expression. "That monster," he murmured, his voice laced with protective fury. He looked back at me, his gaze softening into something that made my stomach do an unaccountant-like flip. "You shouldn't have to work yourself to the bone in the dark. It isn't safe." "It's incredibly unsafe," I thought. "Especially if you look in the bucket." He reached out, his warm, calloused fingers gently wrapping around my wrist to stop my frantic scrubbing. The touch sent a jolt right up my arm. "What is your name, brave girl?" "Ella, your highness," I breathed, offering a wobbly, deeply respectful curtsy from my kneeling position. But as I leaned forward, the heavy silver chain I wore securely tucked beneath my scratchy collar shifted. Gravity, the ultimate auditor of the physical world, took hold. With a soft clink, Lord Malachi's heavy, black iron signet ring, the ultimate symbol of his inner circle, granted only to his ruthless chief accountant, slipped out from the neckline of my dress, dangling directly in the moonlight, mere inches from the crown prince's face. Chapter 2. For a terrifying, suspended second, the black iron signet ring caught the moonlight, spinning gently on its silver chain. It was the undeniable mark of Lord Malachi's inner circle, a ring I used to seal execution orders for tax evaders just 3 hours ago. Julian's eyes tracked the movement, his brow furrowing in confusion as he leaned in to get a better look at the crest. My survival instincts kicked in with the subtlety of a falling anvil. I violently threw myself forward into a coughing fit, slapping my hand against my chest, and shoving the ring back down my scratchy collar with the force of a hydraulic press. I hacked and wheezed, sounding less like a delicate maiden, and more like a dying asthmatic walrus. "Aya, are you alright?" Julian's confusion instantly evaporated, replaced by deep, heroic alarm. He dropped to one knee, a warm, heavy hand rubbing comforting circles between my shoulder blades. "Just cough. Just the damp, sire," I gasped, clutching my chest as if my lungs were failing, while internally verifying the ring was securely tucked against my ribs. "Terrible ventilation down here. As so much dust." "This is unacceptable," Julian declared, his jaw tightening with righteous indignation. "You are clearly unwell. Come, I will escort you back to your quarters." Before I could politely decline and make my escape, he reached for the iron handle of my mop bucket. "No!" I shrieked, lunging forward. I caught myself and immediately transitioned back into a pathetic, wheezing cough. "I mean, it is far too filthy for royal hands, your highness. Please, I can manage." "Nonsense," Julian said gently. He gripped the handle and lifted. His arm muscles instantly locked. He froze, blinking down at the wooden bucket. The 10,000 gold pieces hidden beneath the false bottom of soapy water weighed roughly 70 pounds. "By the gods, Ella," Julian muttered, staring at the bucket as if it had offended him. "What in the world is in this? It weighs as much as a cannonball." "Concentrated soap," I lied smoothly, staring him dead in the eye. "Very dense. Industrial grade. Lord Malachi is very strict about floor buoyancy." Julian shook his head, looking at me with a mixture of profound pity and absolute awe. "To carry this burden every night. Your strength is a testament to the spirit of our people." With a grunt that showcased an frankly distracting amount of bicep, the crown prince hoisted my embezzled treasury off the floor, and began walking toward the servants' wing. The walk was an agonizing exercise in terror. I hovered around him like an anxious bee, terrified that if he swung the bucket too hard, the false bottom would dislodge, and a tidal wave of gold bullion would clatter across the stone floor. Miraculously, we reached the cramped, drafty closet I had claimed as my maid's quarters, without a single metallic clink. Julian set the bucket down with a heavy, wet thud. The room was tiny, forcing us to stand mere inches apart. In the dim light, the prince looked down at me, the harsh lines of his face softening. The air suddenly grew thick, the silence stretching out until the only sound was my racing heartbeat. "You shouldn't have to live like this," Julian murmured softly. He reached out, his callous fingers gently brushing a soot-stained lock of hair from my cheek. His touch was electric, sending a jolt of warmth straight through my panic. "You are extraordinary, Ella. I promise you, when I take back this kingdom, you will never scrub another floor." I stared up into his earnest, beautiful eyes, a sudden, horrifying realization dawning on me. Oh no, the hero is falling in love with me. Before I could even process the disastrous implications for my retirement plans, the peace of the corridor was violently shattered. Crash. The heavy oak door at the end of the servants' hall was kicked entirely off its hinges. The deafening clatter of plate armor echoed through the corridor. "Wake up, you maggots," a gruff voice roared, followed by the terrifying sound of swords being drawn. It was the captain of Lord Malachai's elite guard. "The chief accountant is not in her chambers. Lord Malachai demands an immediate, unannounced audit in the throne room. Find the accountant now, or he'll have all your heads." Chapter 3. The accountant. The guard captain bellowed through the walls, his boots thudding closer. "Search every room. If she's fled, we're all dead." Inside the cramped broom closet, Julian's hand flew to the hilt of his sword. His jaw set into a hard, heroic line. "Do not fear, Ella," he whispered fiercely, stepping in front of me to shield my body with his own. "I will handle these brutes. They will not touch you." "They don't want to touch me, they want to audit me." My brain screamed. "No," I hissed, grabbing his arm and desperately shoving him toward the tiny, ground-level ventilation shaft at the back of the closet. "If you fight them, more will come. You must hide, sire. The kingdom needs you alive, not defending a lowly maid." Julian resisted for a moment, torn between his chivalrous instincts and the cold logic of a tactical retreat. Finally he nodded, his storm-gray eyes softening with terrifying affection. He dropped to his knees, prying the grate open. "You are braver than you know. Meet me in the east courtyard in an hour. By the statues. I will ensure you are safe." Yes, east courtyard, scrubbing the statues, got it," I practically chanted, shoving his royal boots through the vent. "Go." The second his boots disappeared into the darkness, I spun around. I had exactly 4 minutes. I tore off the soot-stained apron, yanked the scratchy gray dress over my head, and kicked it under a pile of dirty rags. From a hidden floorboard beneath my cot, I pulled out my true uniform. The severe, immaculately tailored, midnight black robes of Lord Malachai's chief accountant. I tied my hair into a bun so tight it practically acted as a facelift, shoved my sharp, wire-rimmed spectacles onto my nose, and sprinted out the door, adopting a terrifying, icy scowl just as the guard captain rounded the corner. "There you are, my lady," the captain gasped, dropping to one knee terrified. "Lord Malachai demands your presence. Immediately." "I was inspecting the servants' quarters for wasted candle wax, Captain." I lied flawlessly, my voice dropping to a freezing, authoritative monotone. "Do try to keep your shouting to a minimum. It disrupts my calculations." 10 minutes later, I was standing in the cavernous, blood-red throne room. Lord Malachai, a terrifying man with eyes like crushed coal and a cape that perpetually billowed as if powered by its own evil wind, sat on the throne. He slammed a massive, leather-bound ledger onto the obsidian table before me. "Explain this," Malachai hissed. His voice was a venomous whisper that made the torches flicker. 10,000 gold pieces. Vanished from the defense budget overnight. My heart stopped. It was the exact amount currently sitting in my mop bucket. I pushed my spectacles up my nose, channeling every ounce of ruthless corporate energy from my past life. I didn't flinch. "It hasn't vanished, my lord. It has been reallocated." "Reallocated?" he growled, leaning forward, his hand resting ominously on his dark magic blade. "Yes. It is a simple matter of shifting depreciating assets," I stated, tapping the ledger with a manicured fingernail. "Due to inflation, we had to heavily front-load the amortized dragon feed expenditures. If we don't write off the livestock losses as a collateral tax shield this quarter, we'll take a massive penalty in the fiscal year-end review." The 10,000 was merely placed in a highly illiquid, temporary holding trust. For tax purposes. Malachai stared at me. The guard stared at me. No one in this fantasy realm had a degree in economics. Slowly, the tyrant's terrifying scowl morphed into a dark, impressed smirk. "Brilliant. You truly are as ruthless as they say. You would rob the kingdom blind just to save me a few coppers. Oh, the irony, I thought, bowing my head. However, Malachi continued, steepling his fingers. Since those funds are technically accounted for, use the tax surplus to hire the Shadow Guild. I am tired of waiting. I want my treacherous nephew, Prince Julian, eliminated tonight. My blood ran cold. Tonight, my lord? Malachi gestured to the shadows. A man cloaked entirely in black stepped forward, twirling a poisoned dagger. It was the lead assassin of the Shadow Guild. The contract is drawn, Lord Accountant, the assassin rasped, his eyes gleaming with lethal intent. My scouts have just located the prince. We strike in 20 minutes. I swallowed the lump in my throat, keeping my face a mask of absolute indifference. Excellent. And where is the target currently vulnerable? He is waiting alone, the assassin sneered, grinning beneath his hood. In the east courtyard. By the statues. Chapter 4. The transition from terrifying financial mastermind back to helpless, floor-scrubbing maid was not a graceful one. I sprinted through the secret passageways of the castle like a panicked gazelle, stripping off my severe black robes and furiously wrestling myself back into the damp, soot-stained, scratchy gray dress. I had exactly 6 minutes to intercept an assassination I had just technically authorized. The paperwork for this HR violation was going to be an absolute nightmare. I burst out into the east courtyard just as the moon slid behind a thick bank of clouds. It was a beautiful, sprawling garden filled with ancient marble statues and meticulously trimmed hedges. Standing in the center of it all, looking ridiculously heroic and tragic in the moonlight, was Prince Julian. Ella, he breathed, his face lighting up with genuine relief as he spotted me jogging toward him. You made it. I was beginning to fear the guards had. Your Highness, we have to go inside right now, I interrupted, grabbing him by the forearm and attempting to yank him toward the nearest door. It was like trying to move a redwood tree. Ella, wait, Julian said gently, planting his feet. It is safe out here. The night watch doesn't patrol the statues. We can finally speak freely. No, we really can't, I insisted, planting my hands squarely on his chest and shoving with all my might. He didn't budge an inch. Look at those clouds, sire. It's going to pour. A terrible, violent thunderstorm. We must retreat indoors. To the safety of a heavily barricaded windowless room. Julian looked up at the sky. It's a completely clear night. It's a microclimate, I shrieked, desperately pushing against his armored chest. Please just walk backward. Julian chuckled, a warm, deep sound, and gently caught my wrists. You are trembling. Has Malachi's cruelty truly made you this fearful of the open air? Do not worry, little bird. I am here. Nothing will harm you while I draw breath. That is precisely the problem. I wanted to scream. Before I could formulate another excuse regarding atmospheric pressure, the shadows around us suddenly detached from the hedges. 6 figures clothed entirely in black dropped from the stonework, landing with terrifying, silent precision. The moonlight glinted off their poisoned, serrated daggers. The Shadow Guild had arrived. Julian's romantic demeanor vanished instantly. With the terrifying speed of a seasoned warrior, he drew his broadsword, the steel singing in the quiet night. He smoothly shoved me behind his broad back, his free arm out to shield me. Stay behind me, Ella, he ordered, his voice dropping to a lethal, commanding growl. Do not move. The assassins lunged. What followed was a dizzying blur of clashing steel and martial prowess. Julian was incredible, parrying thrusts and striking back with brutal efficiency, fully living up to his title as the prophesied hero. But there were 6 of them, and they fought dirty, constantly trying to flank him to get to his fragile maid. I ducked as a rogue throwing knife buried itself into a marble cherub's face, right next to my head. This was entirely unacceptable. I was an auditor, not collateral damage. Julian drove his sword through the shoulder of one attacker, but left his blind spot exposed. Another assassin, gripping a jagged dagger, leaped silently from the top of a hedge, aiming directly for Julian's unprotected neck. I didn't have a weapon, but I did have an eye for misplaced inventory. I snatched a heavy, tarnished silver serving platter off a discarded tea cart left by the garden wall. With all the pent-up rage of a woman working 2 full-time jobs without overtime pay, I swung the platter like a baseball bat. Clang! The heavy silver connected solidly with the leaping assassin's skull. The sheer force of the impact sent him spinning through the air, crashing hard into the gravel path. Julian spun around, wide-eyed, staring at me holding the dented silver tray like a deranged waitress. Yeah. You fought him off. Adrenaline. I squeaked, dropping the platter. But the assassin wasn't dead. Groaning, he pushed himself up onto his elbows. The impact of the platter had completely shattered the leather straps of his mask. The fabric fell away, revealing a scarred face and a very distinctive, broken nose. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that nose. I had stared at it across an obsidian table just 20 minutes ago while negotiating his upfront retainer fee. The dazed mercenary shook his head, his eyes struggling to focus in the moonlight. His gaze landed on me, locking onto my face. The murderous intent in his eyes instantly evaporated into profound, utter bewilderment as he gasped, "Lord Accountant?" Chapter 5. Lord Accountant? The assassin's confused, gravelly voice echoed loudly in the quiet courtyard. He squinted at me, rubbing his bleeding forehead, clearly trying to reconcile the terrifying, bespectacled bureaucrat who had just paid him a hefty advance with the soot-covered maid currently wielding a dented hors d'oeuvres tray. My heart flatlined. This was it. The audit of my life was about to end in a lethal penalty. I think the poor man has a severe concussion. I cried out, pointing wildly at the mercenary. He's hallucinating. He thinks I do math. I braced myself for the inevitable explanation, preparing to sprint for the nearest hedge, but I had severely underestimated the protective instincts of a fantasy novel hero. Before the assassin could open his mouth to clarify my dual identity, the tip of Julian's broadsword protruded abruptly from the man's chest. With a swift, clean motion, Julian withdrew his blade. The mercenary collapsed back onto the gravel, permanently silenced before he could breach my confidentiality agreement. The remaining assassins, seeing their leader easily dispatched and realizing they were severely outmatched by an angry, protective crown prince, immediately scrambled over the garden walls and vanished into the night. Silence descended upon the courtyard, save for the heavy breathing of the prince. He stood amidst the fallen, his sword dripping, the moonlight casting dramatic, heroic shadows across his face. He sheathed his weapon and turned to me. I was still gripping the silver platter, frozen in a state of sheer shock. Not only had my assassination plot failed, but my target had just violently murdered my primary contractor. The severance package paperwork was going to be a nightmare. "Ella," Julian breathed, closing the distance between us in 2 long strides. Without warning, his strong arms wrapped around me, pulling me flush against his solid, armor-clad chest. The scent of rain, leather, and exertion enveloped me. My cheek pressed against his racing heart, and for a terrifying second, my own pulse spiked in response. He pulled back just enough to frame my face with his large, warm hands. His storm gray eyes searched mine, filled with an intensity that made my knees feel dangerously weak. "You saved my life," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He glanced down at the dented silver tray, a look of profound wonder crossing his features. "You faced down a trained killer from the Shadow Guild, with a tea tray. You are magnificent." "It was just heavy," I stammered, my carefully crafted lies dissolving under his burning gaze. I panicked. "I didn't want you to die. Because if you die, I can't steal your inheritance," I reminded myself desperately. "Focus, Ilara. Focus on the money." "I will not let them hurt you," Julian vowed, his thumb gently stroking my cheek. The raw honesty in his voice was devastating. "I came back to this castle to reclaim my throne, to seek vengeance. But looking at you now, I realize there are more precious things in this kingdom to protect. I have fallen for you, Ella. Completely." My breath hitched. The hero was confessing his love, in the middle of a crime scene, to the villain's accountant. "Julian, you can't," I started, my mind frantically trying to calculate the emotional and physical liabilities of this situation. "I can and I have," he interrupted firmly, pulling me close once more, his jaw set with absolute, unyielding determination. "I cannot leave you in this den of vipers for another day. I've made my decision. Pack whatever meager belongings you have, Ella. Tomorrow at dawn, I am smuggling you out of the kingdom." Chapter 6. Smuggled out of the kingdom at dawn. The phrase echoed in my mind like a terrifying legal summons as I scrubbed the last of the assassin's blood off the courtyard gravel. Julian's romantic declaration was the single worst thing that could possibly happen to my financial portfolio. If I fled the capital tomorrow morning disguised as a helpless maid, I would be leaving behind millions in unlaundered treasury funds, currently locked in a subterranean escrow vault waiting to be converted into magical bearer bonds. I couldn't just walk away. I needed 3 more days, minimum, to liquidate those assets. I had to freeze the prince's extraction plan. The next morning, stepping back into the severe, black robes of the chief accountant, I marched directly into Lord Malachi's war room. "My lord, the security breach last night was catastrophic," I announced, slamming a fresh, terrifyingly thick ledger onto the table. "Assassins in the East Courtyard? It is a liability nightmare. Our insurance premiums alone will bankrupt the royal treasury." Malachi, who was currently brooding over a map of the continent, scowled. "The guard is incompetent. What is your proposal, accountant?" "A total perimeter lockdown," I said smoothly, pushing my wire-rimmed spectacles up my nose. "I have already pre-approved the budget for an arcane overhaul. A Tier 4 magical security grid surrounding all exits. Lethal force authorized." Malachi's dark eyes gleamed with sadistic approval. "Executed immediately." By nightfall, the castle was a fortress. I had personally overseen the installation. To keep the energy costs down, I had selected a highly efficient, minimalist arcane design. Instead of roaring walls of fire, the perimeter was now crisscrossed by a deadly, intersecting web of magical tripwires that glowed in deceptively pleasant pastel hues of peach, cream, and sage. It looked incredibly aesthetic, like something out of a soft, calming daydream, but stepping through it would vaporize a man's molecular structure in 3 seconds. It was the perfect barricade. Nobody was getting in, and more importantly, Prince Julian was not getting me out. At exactly midnight, I met Julian in the shadows of the servants' corridor, wearing my scratchy maid's dress, and carrying a tiny linen bundle I'd hastily packed with stale bread and a single bar of soap. "You're here," Julian whispered, grabbing my hand, his storm gray eyes filled with fierce, protective resolve. "The horses are waiting just beyond the treeline. Stick close to me, Ella. We'll be out of this nightmare in 5 minutes." I gave him a wobbly, terrified nod, internally doing a victory dance. "Just wait until you see the front door, buddy." We crept through the silent, torch-lit halls, Julian effortlessly bypassing 2 sleeping guards. We reached the heavy iron portcullis of the postern gate. Julian reached for the lever, triumphant. Then he saw it. A glowing, impenetrable web of peach, cream, and sage magic lasers completely blocked the archway, humming with lethal, high-voltage arcane energy. Julian recoiled, his jaw dropping in sheer disbelief. "By the gods, what is this? This wasn't here yesterday." "Oh no," I gasped, feigning absolute devastation. "It looks like some sort of highly efficient, aesthetically pleasing death trap. I suppose we must cancel our escape, Your Highness. It's completely hopeless." Julian's eyes narrowed. His jaw set with that terrifying, unyielding heroic determination that was quickly becoming the bane of my existence. "I did not swear to protect you only to give up at the first obstacle. The grid is active, but look, the magic pulses. There is a gap. A structural flaw near the left archway." My heart stopped. He was looking at the small, 10-inch gap I had purposely left in the bottom corner, so the castle's stray cats could still get in and out. "Sire, that is entirely too small." "We can make it," Julian interrupted, his voice dropping to a low, commanding whisper. "But we have to move together. Exactly together." Before I could protest, he pulled me against the cold stone of the archway. He stepped into my space, pressing his body flush against mine to minimize our surface area. His arm wrapped tightly around my waist, flattening me against the wall as the pastel-colored lasers hummed mere millimeters from our noses. The heat radiating from his armor was suffocating, and the scent of rain and leather filled my lungs. We were pressed so tightly together, I could feel his heart hammering against my chest. "Do not move, Ella," he whispered, his lips brushing the shell of my ear, sending a terrifying shiver down my spine. "If you take a single deep breath, the grid will trigger, and the alarm will wake the entire castle." Chapter 7. The air in the archway tasted like ozone and impending doom. My back was pressed flat against the cold stone, and Julian's solid, armored chest was pressed flush against mine. Every time his heart beat, I felt it against my ribcage. The pastel-hued lasers hummed menacingly, casting a soft, minimalist peach glow over his sharp jawline. "On 3, he murmured, his lips brushing my ear. "Slide to the right. 1, 2, 3. We moved in agonizing, synchronized inches. The sage-colored beam sliced through the air barely a millimeter from my nose. I held my breath until my lungs screamed. We were almost through the gap when the arcane grid suddenly pulsed. A beam flared, erratic and blindingly bright. Julian reacted with pure instinct. He violently twisted his body, shoving me clear of the archway and taking the brunt of the fluctuating laser himself. We tumbled out onto the damp grass of a hidden alcove just beyond the walls, a tangled mess of limbs and linen. The scent of singed leather filled the air. "Julian!" I gasped, scrambling to my knees. He was clutching his upper arm, his teeth gritted in a tight smile. The magic had sliced cleanly through his pauldron, leaving a nasty, seeping burn across his bicep. "It is nothing, Ella," he rasped, trying to hide the wound. "Just a graze. We need to keep moving." "You are bleeding actively, which is a massive liability," I snapped, entirely forgetting to sound like a helpless maid. I grabbed his arm, forcing his hand away. "Sit still." I tore a clean strip of fabric from the hem of my apron and pressed it against the burn, to secure the makeshift bandage tightly over his bicep. I hastily pulled a soft, handmade scrunchie from my pocket. I'd been crocheting them from cheap wool during my scarce downtime to keep my hands from cramping after hours of ledger writing. I wrapped the thick, stretchy yarn securely around his muscular arm, pulling it taut. Julian watched my hands work, his chest heaving. Stripped of his untouchable royal facade, bleeding in the dirt of an overgrown alcove, he looked terrifyingly human. And looking at him, really looking at the man who had just thrown himself into a magical laser beam to protect a floor scrubber, I felt a catastrophic shift in my internal balance sheet. Oh no, I realized with dawning horror. I'm liquidating my emotional boundaries. I actually like him. Julian reached up with his uninjured arm, gently cupping my cheek. His thumb stroked my jaw, his storm gray eyes dropping to my lips. The tension in the tiny alcove snapped, shifting from frantic survival into something heavy, breathless, and electric. He leaned in, his gaze burning with raw affection, and I found myself helplessly leaning forward to meet him. Our lips were a breath apart when a smooth, black stone in my apron pocket, my emergency communication pager linked directly to Lord Malachi's inner circle, suddenly vibrated violently, glowing a furious, blood-red and projecting the tyrant's echoing, enraged voice straight into the quiet alcove. Chapter 8. Accountant, where are you? Lord Malachi's magically amplified voice exploded from the black stone in my pocket, echoing through the quiet bamboo grove with the force of a sonic boom. Julian flinched, instinctively reaching for his sword. The romantic tension vanished, instantly replaced by the terrifying reality of my tyrannical boss demanding a status update at 1 a.m. I didn't think, I just reacted. I shoved my hand into my apron, yanked out the glowing communication stone, and pitched it over Julian's shoulder with the arm of a major league pitcher. Bloop. The stone sank to the bottom of the adjacent lotus pond, bubbling furiously as Malachi's muffled screams were swallowed by the koi fish. Julian stared at the ripples, his sword half drawn. Ella, what in the heavens was that? A cursed jade trinket. I gasped, clutching my chest. I was sweeping it out of the eastern pavilion. Terribly dark magic. Very bad feng shui. It's been whispering accounting terms at me all night. Julian's eyes softened with heroic pity. The corruption in this palace runs deeper than I thought. To inflict such psychological torture on a maid. He shook his head, gently squeezing my hand. We will try the extraction again tomorrow. I nodded fervently, mentally calculating how fast I could launder the remaining funds. The next morning, the terrifying illusion of romance was shattered by cold, hard corporate panic. I stood in the throne room, my severe black robes a stark contrast to the blood-red silk banners and dark mahogany pillars, as Malachi slammed a ledger onto the table. Explain this, he hissed, his dark eyes burning. I found a discrepancy in the Southern Trade Route taxes. A massive sum routed to Aflora and Mia Vanna Silk Exports. A company that does not exist. My stomach plummeted. That was my primary shell corporation. I had named it after two fictional characters from a novel I read in my past life just to keep the ledger straight. Yes, I said smoothly, pushing my wire-rimmed spectacles up my nose. I didn't miss a beat. I flagged that anomaly yesterday, my lord. I ran a comprehensive background audit. It appears the head of the Imperial Guard has been skimming from the treasury to fund his own private militia. Malachi's face twisted into a mask of pure, sadistic rage. The guard captain. Treason. Indeed. I lied, effectively signing a man's death warrant to protect my retirement fund. I suggest immediate liquidation of his assets. Better, Malachi grinned, leaning back on his throne. I will make a public spectacle of him. I am hosting the Grand Lantern Masquerade tomorrow night to celebrate our triumph over the assassins. I will execute him at the stroke of midnight. He pointed a heavily ringed finger at me. You will attend as my guest of honor, Lord Accountant. We're something terrifying. Hours later, as I was scrubbing the courtyard tiles, Julian cornered me behind a marble pillar, pressing a beautiful, delicate silk domino mask into my soapy hands. Ella, he whispered urgently, his storm gray eyes locking onto mine. The tyrant is throwing a masquerade tomorrow. It is the perfect cover. Come as my secret date, and we will escape together under the cover of the midnight fireworks. Chapter 9. The Grand Lantern Masquerade was a logistical nightmare that would have stress-tested the sanity of a seasoned event planner, let alone an embezzler working 2 full-time jobs. The Imperial Ballroom was ablaze with thousands of floating paper lanterns, casting a warm, golden glow over the opulent silk tapestries and the terrifyingly wealthy elite of the kingdom. I, however, was currently sweating through my second layer of clothing behind a decorative potted bamboo tree. Playing a deadly game of quick change was exhausting. For the first hour, I was Lord Malachi's terrifying guest of honor. I wore a sweeping, midnight black silk gown embroidered with silver thread that looked suspiciously like a sprawling spreadsheet. A severe, silver half-mask obscured my upper face. I stood beside the tyrant's throne, sipping plum wine and ruthlessly discussing the upcoming execution's return on investment. The public morale boost should yield a 5% increase in taxable productivity, I murmured coldly, watching the nobles dance. Fascinating, Malachi grinned, swirling his wine. And the cost of the executioner's axe? Fully depreciated, my lord. I bowed my head respectfully. Now, if you will excuse me, I must go audit the buffet table. I suspect the caterers are skimming the imported caviar. The moment I stepped out of Malachi's line of sight, I sprinted behind a heavy velvet curtain. In a frantic, panicked blur, I yanked off the heavy silk overcoat, exposing the scratchy gray maid's dress I was wearing underneath. I tied a clean white apron around my waist, swapped the severe silver mask for the delicate, pale silk domino mask Julian had given me, and practically threw myself out a side door into the moonlit garden. Julian was waiting by the lotus pond, wearing a simple, dark mask that did absolutely nothing to hide his unfairly handsome jawline. Ella, he breathed, catching my hands as I stumbled toward him, panting heavily. You made it. You look breathless. The stairs, I wheezed, wiping a bead of sweat from my forehead. So many stairs. The catering staff is very disorganized. He pulled me into a gentle waltz right there in the garden, spinning me beneath the glowing paper lanterns. It was sickeningly romantic. For 10 minutes, I allowed myself to just be Ella, leaning against his solid chest, listening to his heartbeat, and ignoring the fact that I was actively robbing him blind. We leave at midnight, he murmured against my hair, holding me close. During the fireworks. But first there is something I must do inside. A matter of honor. Honor. I squeaked, my financial spider senses tingling. Wait for me here, Julian commanded softly, pressing a kiss to the back of my hand. He turned and strode purposefully back toward the main ballroom. Panic seized me. I had to get back inside to ensure Malachi didn't notice my absence, but I also needed to be out here for Julian. I dashed back to the velvet curtain, executing my fastest wardrobe change yet. Off came the apron and the domino mask. On went the sweeping black silk coat and the severe silver half mask. I smoothed back my hair, adopted my icy, terrifying accountant scowl, and stepped out onto the ballroom floor just as the musicians announced the final waltz. I scanned the room for Malachi, intent on resuming my post. Suddenly, the crowd parted. Striding across the polished floor with lethal, unwavering focus, was Prince Julian. His storm gray eyes were locked dead onto my silver mask. He was marching directly toward the tyrant's right-hand woman, his hand resting heavily on his sword hilt, completely unaware that the ruthless architect of his kingdom's financial ruin he was about to confront was his sweet, innocent maid. Chapter 10. I froze, my meticulously calculated composure crumbling as the crown prince planted himself directly in front of me. Up close, the severity of my silver mask and the imposing cut of my midnight black silk robes usually terrified people into stammering submission. Julian, however, was prophesied to be a hero. He didn't stammer. He glared. Lord Accountant, Julian sneered, his voice laced with absolute, undisguised loathing. The sheer force of his hostility hit me like a physical blow. Just 10 minutes ago, this man had been holding me in his arms by the lotus pond, whispering sweet promises into my hair. Now he looked at me like I was a particularly repulsive tax audit. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcefully deepening my voice to an icy, authoritative monotone. Your Highness, you are disrupting my fiscal projections. If you have a grievance regarding your allowance, please submit a formal requisition form to the imperial clerks. Do not play your bureaucratic games with me, you parasite, Julian growled, stepping so close I could feel the heat radiating from him. I know what you are doing. I have seen the state of the outer provinces. You and my uncle have bled the imperial treasury dry. You are destroying the foundation of this empire, hoarding our wealth while the people suffer. His words pierced right through my corporate armor. In my past life, numbers on a spreadsheet were just numbers. A liquidated asset here, a slash budget there. It never had a face. But standing here, looking into the fiercely protective, devastated eyes of the man I had inadvertently made a penniless heir, the reality of my grand embezzlement scheme crashed down on me. I wasn't just stealing from a tyrant. I was stealing the kingdom's future. I was stealing his future. The guilt was suffocating, entirely unamortizable. The empire's assets are currently tied up in long-term, high-yield investments. I managed to say, my icy facade cracking slightly. I assure you, the capital is secure. Secure in whose pockets? Julian demanded, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword so tightly his knuckles turned white. His storm-gray eyes blazed with a desperate, passionate fury. Where are the funds? Tell me, or I swear to the heavens I will. You will do what, nephew? The venomous, silken voice sliced through the music of the ballroom. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The surrounding nobles instantly backed away, their silk robes rustling in terror. Lord Malachi materialized from the crowd, his dark eyes fixed on Julian with murderous delight. Dark, crackling energy, the unmistakable aura of forbidden chi, spilled from his fingertips. Julian didn't back down. He shifted his stance, placing himself slightly in front of me. Even now, believing I was the architect of his misery, his heroic instincts drove him to shield a perceived non-combatant from Malachi's wrath. Your reign of terror ends tonight, uncle, Julian declared, drawing his blade. The polished steel caught the light of the floating lanterns. Malachi laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed off the jade floors. He slowly unsheathed his own weapon, a terrifying, jagged gem forged from dark magic iron. I have tolerated your pathetic rebellion because it amused me, Malachi hissed, the dark energy swirling around his blade. He took a predatory step forward, effectively trapping Julian and me against the heavy mahogany pillars. But threatening my chief accountant? The only person in this miserable palace who actually turns a profit. Malachi smiled, a cruel, blood-chilling sight, and raised his dark blade. I think it is finally time to liquidate the royal bloodline. Permanently. Chapter 11. The clash of steel against dark magic sounded like a thunderclap inside the ballroom. The shockwave from Malachi's initial strike shattered the nearest floating paper lanterns, raining burning embers down upon the screaming, fleeing nobility. Julian held his ground, his broadsword trembling under the sheer, unnatural weight of his uncle's jagged blade. Even as he strained against the tyrant, Julian threw a glance over his shoulder at me. Run, you fool, he roared over the din of battle. Get out of here. Run, I thought, my heart hammering against my ribs. And leave my primary investment unprotected? Absolutely not. Malachi's elite guards, having recovered from the initial panic, were now drawing their weapons, preparing to swarm the prince from behind. Julian was an incredible swordsman, but he couldn't fight a dozen men and a magically enhanced tyrant simultaneously. He needed an intervention. Fortunately, nobody in this room knew the castle's depreciation schedule better than its auditor. I had personally vetoed the structural maintenance budget for this exact wing 3 months ago. Dropping my icy, dignified facade, I hiked up my sweeping black silk skirts and sprinted toward the wall. The structural integrity of the eastern sector is entirely compromised, I yelled, grabbing a heavy, decorative halberd from a suit of armor. I swung the heavy polearm directly at the rusted, ungreased winch securing the grand crystal chandelier above the guards. Snap. Gravity, the ultimate liquidator, took over. Thousands of pounds of crystal and iron plummeted from the vaulted ceiling, crashing down upon the royal guards with a deafening, floor-shaking crunch. A massive cloud of plaster dust and pulverized crystal plumed into the air, effectively neutralizing the reinforcements. Julian stared at me, completely flabbergasted by the accountant's sudden, violently helpful outburst. That momentary distraction cost him. Malachi sneered, throwing out a hand. A blast of kinetic dark magic struck Julian in the chest, sending him crashing backward through a mahogany table. He collapsed amid the splinters, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, struggling to rise. "Treason," Malachi whispered, turning his terrifying, coal-black eyes slowly toward me. The dark aura around him flared, feeding on his fury. "My own chief accountant? You dare destroy my assets?" "They were fully depreciated liabilities, my lord," I shouted, backing away quickly. I didn't make it 3 steps. Malachi crossed the distance with supernatural speed. His large, heavily ringed hand shot out, grabbing me brutally by the throat. He lifted me completely off the polished jade floor, my black silk robes pooling around my dangling feet. I clawed desperately at his grip, gasping for air. "You thought you could outsmart me with your numbers?" Malachi snarled, his face inches from mine, the dark magic making my skin burn. "Let us see the face of the traitor." With a vicious yank, Malachi ripped the severe silver half-mask from my face, taking my wire-rimmed spectacles with it. The tight bun holding my hair snapped, sending it cascading over my shoulders. I choked, my face laid bare in the flickering light of the burning room, directly in the line of sight of the stunned, bleeding crown prince, who stared in absolute, world-shattering horror as he realized the ruthless accountant and his sweet, beloved maid were the exact same person. Chapter 12. Julian's storm-gray eyes widened, the betrayal and sheer shock radiating from him so intensely it almost hurt worse than Malachi's crushing grip. "Ella," he gasped, his voice cracking. He looked from my disheveled hair to my severe black silk robes, his mind violently struggling to process the hostile merger of his 2 realities. "Surprise," I wheezed, my feet kicking uselessly above the shattered jade floor. "I have a very diversified portfolio." Malachi looked between us, his cruel smile widening as he finally connected the dots. "Oh, this is priceless." The prophesied hero, desperately in love with the architect of his own ruin. How wonderfully pathetic. The tyrant's grip tightened on my windpipe. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. My internal ledger was rapidly approaching a zero balance. I couldn't breathe, let alone channel any inner chi to defend myself. But an auditor always keeps backups. Using the last ounce of my strength, I reached deep into the dimensional sleeve of my robes, a very expensive, magically expanded storage pocket I'd expensed to the imperial stationery budget. My fingers wrapped around the cold, heavy iron bindings of my master ledger. It contained the kingdom's true financial records, heavily weighted with 50 pounds of solid brass clasps and dense, enchanted parchment. With a desperate, choked cry, I swung the massive book upward. Crack. The brass-bound ledger collided squarely with the bridge of Malachi's nose. The tyrant bellowed in pain, his dark chi faltering as his face met the crushing weight of sheer bureaucratic mass. His grip loosened just enough. I dropped to the floor, gasping hungrily for air, rubbing my bruised throat as I scrambled backward. "Julian now," I croaked. Despite the devastating heartbreak surely warring in his chest, Julian's warrior instincts prevailed. He launched himself from the splintered mahogany debris, channeling his remaining chi into his blade. The steel glowed with blinding, righteous light as he closed the distance in a single heartbeat. With a primal roar, Julian drove his sword directly through Lord Malachi's chest, piercing the tyrant's dark meridian core. Malachi gasped, the dark energy violently short-circuiting around him. He staggered backward, his jagged jian clattering uselessly to the floor. He fell to his knees, his lifeblood pooling out over the ruined jade tiles. Julian stood over him, chest heaving, his eyes tormented as he looked from his dying uncle to me. The reign of terror was over. The audit was complete. We had survived. But as I pulled myself up, leaning heavily against a shattered pillar, I saw Malachi's blood-soaked lips twist into a horrifying, triumphant grin. "You think you have won?" Malachi spat, coughing up blood. He pressed his hand against the floor, pouring his final corrupted life force into the palace's foundation.